for the most part, pretty straightforward. Anybody can do it. Just have to have a little bit of knowledge of what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, and a little bit of help along the way. All right, guys, get started. Greetings, y'all. Nathan Christ here, owner of Daisy Dukes Landscaping, and today we're talking about pre-emergent, and not so much what is a pre-emergent, but how to apply pre-emergent. So if you don't know what a pre-emergent is, go down to the description below, check out the link where I talk about what a pre-emergent is, how it's used, and how much do you need. I'm going to take just a minute and talk about different types of spreaders, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you what I'm using and how to put it out. Now then, with the exception to the one at the far left, all of these other spreaders are a form of broadcast or rotary spreaders. Basically what that means is as you push them, or if you have a tow behind model like the black AgriFab, what it's going to do is it's going to cast that product out. And the faster you walk or the faster you pull it, the farther of a swath or a farther of a spread that it will actually distribute the product. Now the one on the far left is what we call a drop spreader, and it literally means exactly what it says in its name. It just drops the product straight down to the ground. So if you're doing any type of yard application, that's probably not going to be the best spreader for you unless you have a very small area to do. About the AgriFab pull behind spreader real quick. Let me tell you what I do like about the spreader. I like the air-filled tires, the pneumatic tires, and that's about it. I like the hopper size. It holds, probably 50 or 60 pounds of product. But here's what I didn't like about it. It was very hard to adjust the rate of flow. Setting it up isn't difficult, but what's difficult is managing how much product you're putting out, because as you get down to each end of the row after you do your border pass, you slow down to turn, and so what's happening is you're putting out your product real heavy in the turns, and it's really, really difficult to reach back and pull this lever to stop the flow of the product. So I really didn't like this one a whole lot, and I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, guys, so let me just talk about these two different broadcast spreaders real quick. So I've got the Scott's Turf Builder on the left, and I've got the Earthway in the red on the right, and they're both broadcast spreaders. They both have some type of edge guard feature, which by that I mean you can actually stop the flow of product to half of the distribution, so that if you're going around flower beds or if you're going around a driveway or something like that, you can actually stop the flow on half the size so that you don't put product where you don't want it. Now here's the edge guard feature that I was talking about. So what I can do is I can engage this feature, and basically it's going to either put it on one half or it's going to put it on a full spread. So that's a pretty nice feature to have. For a homeowner, I'd say the Scott's spreader, the green one on the left, would probably do just fine. It's adjustable, just like the Earthway spreader is. It's pretty easy to use. All you have to do is you turn this dial, it changes your spreader settings, so the higher the number, the more product you're going to let out, and then the lower the number, the less amount of product you're going to put out. And so it's pretty much the same way on the Earthway spreader here. As I change the setting, I can open it and close it and adjust how much product I want to come out. Now outside of that, that's about all the similarities they have. Let me tell you how they differ. So first of all, you can see the size difference between these two. Obviously the Earthway is going to hold a lot more product, which isn't necessarily a pro, because I'm not always going to be pushing 100 pounds of product in this spreader. Matter of fact, I don't want to push 100 pounds of product because that's a lot of weight to be pushing around. Also inside of the Earthway spreader, I've got this grate, this screen that I can actually take out. Basically, when I put the product on there, if there's any big chunks or if there's been any moisture or anything like that and the pieces are sticking together, it's going to sift that through, leave the big pieces on top, and let the granules fall to the bottom, so that I get a good even distribution. The only other things that I would talk about, especially if you're talking about commercial applications, I started out over here, but I quickly upgraded to a bigger, more industrial spreader, and here's why. When you're pushing product with these little plastic wheels, man, it is tough to push this up a hill, or it's tough when you get on a hill or when you go to make your turn. This thing wants to tip over, and you have to be very careful about that, because if you put too much fertilizer, if it falls over, it's done. You cannot get it out of the ground well enough to keep it from burning the lawn. So this Earthway spreader has got these big pneumatic tires, these big air-filled tires, and this thing is so sturdy, I've never even come close to dumping it on the ground.
So guys, I almost forgot to talk about this. This is my cheat sheet that I put on every spreader. So basically what it is every spreader from the factory comes somewhat calibrated, but each spreader is a little bit different. And even over time, as you use the spreader or as the parts kind of start to break in, the amount of product that you're going to put down is going to change a little bit. But this is kind of my dummy proof. If I use this spreader and I only use it once a year, I'm going to remember. Or in my case, if I've got employees, they can come here and look at this diagram and they know exactly what it means. So first, let's look at the top line where it's talking about fertilizer. I know just by looking at this, if I want to put down 8 pounds of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet, I need to have my spreader setting on a 9.5, and I need to work in a perpendicular or a checkerboard pattern, which is going to make sense here in just a minute. Now, same thing with the Preemergent on the bottom. If I'm looking at putting out 4.5 pounds per 1,000 square feet, I need the spreader setting on a 4 3/4 and also working in a perpendicular pattern. Now you guys might be saying, how do I know how many pounds of product that I want to use per 1,000 square feet? And guys, super simple, just follow the instructions on the bag. So guys, I almost forgot to show you the handheld spreader. And this is actually a spreader that I use quite frequently. Now I don't use it a whole lot for lawn applications, but it works good for flower beds and things like that. Basically, it's just got this little adjuster on the side and you fill up the hopper and there's a trigger and you just squeeze the trigger and then you just crank on it and it broadcasts that product back out. Sometimes it's the closest thing I get to fishing, so I really like to use this spreader. Outside of flower beds and things like that, the time that I use this spreader more than anything else is for fire ant treatment. Guys, it works great. I can put out the amount of product that I need and I can treat a pretty good area, even a yard, with just a small crank of the handle. So be looking for that video. I'll drop a link in the comments below, and that way you guys can find a link to that video as well. As always, guys, I'll drop links in the description below so that you guys can kind of do your own research and figure out what works best for you.
All right, guys, welcome back. So now that you know we're using a broadcast spreader, and I prefer this Earthway brand, let's talk about what I'm actually putting out. So I'm putting out a Preemergent, but it's actually got fertilizer in it. So now then, there's a bunch of different products you can use, but the active ingredient that I like to use early in the spring is called prodiamine. This is Lebanon Pro, and you see these numbers here, 1304. Those are representative of the percent of nutrients that are in this bag. So 1304, sometimes in the industry you'll hear people say NPK. What's the NPK? And basically what that stands for is nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. Nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about NPK. So this bag right here is 13% nitrogen, there's no phosphate, and 4% potassium. And you say, well, what do those numbers really mean? So this is the easiest way I can explain it to a very beginner, somebody who's early learning this stuff. The first number is up, second number is down, third number is all around. Up, down, all around. So the nitrogen's going to help it grow up, it's going to help it green. The phosphate's going to help it get a good root system, and potassium's going to help it spread out and get a good thick lawn. So that's the easiest way I can describe it. And one other thing that I like, it actually tells you on here, if you're using a broadcast spreader, it shows you how many pounds per 1,000 square feet. So this is actually measured at 3.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And it tells you if you're using an Earthway rotary spreader, what setting you want to be on. So it says I want to be on setting 16. And that's actually very close to where I keep it at. I've got mine just a little bit higher, but that's because I'd like to walk faster. So basically, the faster you walk, the further it's going to broadcast, right? Now, you don't want to be running because you want to be able to keep the same pace throughout the whole lawn application so that you're not light in one area and heavy in the next. So try to keep the same pace as you're walking. Golly, all this traffic, all these airplanes, you guys probably can't hear a thing. So I'm gonna yell. So one of the things that I like to do is instead of just walking straight and putting down a heavy amount of, in this case, Preemergent in one pass, I like to split it up. So I like to go down the row and then I'll turn around and go back up. So I'll go in a perpendicular pattern, a checkered board pattern. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Now the last thing that I'm going to tell you before we actually get to where we're putting it out, make sure your spreader is shut off. Don't have it open when you pour that bag in there and you walk away to do something else and you forget and the chute's open and all your stuff's pouring out all over the ground. So here's the other important thing. Don't fill up your spreader in the grass. I prefer to get on the driveway, whether it's a gravel driveway or a concrete driveway, somewhere where you can clean up if you make a mistake. So guys, that's really what you need to know to get started. I'm gonna change the vantage point so you can see this yard. And typically I like to use an automatic driving broadcast spreader on this yard, but for video's sake, I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way. I'm gonna get a little exercise and show you guys what I mean. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around the perimeter, and then I'm gonna make my passes this way, and then I'm gonna turn around and come back the other way. And I'm gonna try to wear the other camera so that you guys can see. But as I get down to the end of each row, I actually shut the spreader off, and then I turn around, and when I start going back up the other side, I open it back up again so that I'm not putting it real heavy in the outskirts on the perimeter. I'm not putting it down real heavy in the perimeter, and usually your turns are slower. So again, when I get down to the end where it's starting to broadcast into my perimeter pass, I cut it off, I make my turn, come back, and when I start coming back straight, I open it up again. So, all right guys, let's get started. So guys, I got a little ahead of myself. One thing that's very important to know before you do anything is to know how many square feet you're working with. I've done this yard so many times that I know this whole front area and the side of the house is 20,000 square feet. So make sure that you know how much square footage you actually have to cover and calculate it. You can Google search a square footage calculator, or maybe we'll talk about it in another video, how to figure out how many square feet you have. But nonetheless, make sure you know how many square feet you're working with and how many pounds of product that bag is going to cover. It'll tell you on the bag, or when you go to the store and buy it, whoever you talk to, they'll tell you it'll cover up to X amount of square feet. But make sure that's right for your application. Because for the most part, pretty straightforward, anybody can do it. Just have to have a little bit of knowledge of what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, and a little bit of help along the way. All right, guys, get started.
So I'm going to load this up. Again, note, I'm on the driveway. Make sure you're on the driveway, a hard surface, gravel, something like that. My spreader is closed. Just double check that. And then make sure you got your eyes on and your gloves, your PPE, right? Your personal protective equipment. Now, depending how big your spreader is, will depend on how much you can hold. This will hold about 100 pounds, but as you see, this hill that we're going to be working with, I do not want to walk and push 100 pounds of hill.
Now then, I'm going to make my border pass. I'm going to change my spreader setting back to full discharge, because right now it's just half. And then after I finish my perimeter lap and change my setting back, then I'm going to make all my passes going this way. And I like to start, especially if I'm on a hill, I'm going to start at the top of the hill and then go down, because it'll be a little less tiring than trying to turn and push it up the hill. And then when I come back this way, I'm just going to have to fight the hill. So.
Whew, y'all, I'm getting tired. So now hopefully you can see the tire tracks from the spreader in the yard. There's a set of tracks. What I want to point out is they're not really straight, right? I mean, they're pretty straight, but they got a little bit of curve to it. All right, so you see this? The longer you walk, the squirrelier you get. That's why it's good to go two different directions.
I've used some of those other spreaders from Home Depot, from Lowe's, the ones with the plastic wheels, the cheap ones, some of the ones I showed you earlier. And guys, doesn't matter if it's Earthway. I like Earthway because it's a good solid product. But you want something with a big tire that's full of air. You don't want those plastic wheels. They're hard to push. They don't go over the hills very well. and they're not made to last on big applications or a lot of applications. But if you got to start somewhere, start with one of those and work your way up. That's what I did. That's it for the front yard. Let's go do the courtyard and the side yards now. Now then, let's go on the other side of the fence to my favorite part of this yard. Well, I guess it's my second favorite part. I like the front because you can give it $1 million view very, very easily. But the courtyard area. Now this area here, obviously it's kind of difficult to go back and forth at a perpendicular angle. So I just hit the same area twice and made sure it was good even coverage. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the backpack blower, I'm going to blow off the walkway, I'm going to fluff up the pine straw a little bit, and then I'm going to hit the driveway. Basically I'm blowing off all the hard surfaces. First of all, I want to get the pellets off the driveway. Sometimes when they get wet, they can leave stains on the driveway. But more importantly, that chemical herbicide, whatever it is, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's pre-emergent, whether it's both, you don't want it to be on that hard surface and get a rain and run off into the creeks and streams. It's the biggest thing is you're trying to avoid the runoff. So I'm going to blow this stuff off, and we're going to hit the driveway, and we'll be out of here. All right, guys, last thing we need to do is clean up the spreader. So you see the yellow residue, that's from the pre-emergent. It's the same thing if you have fertilizer. Same thing inside here. There's some pellets and stuff that are in there. So I'm going to pull that screen out after I wash it, spray those pellets down. But guys, it's super, super important. Otherwise, your equipment's going to rust and it's not going to last maybe a couple of years. That's it. So make sure you take care of your stuff. So I'm going to head and spray this off. All right, guys, so there it is. It's all cleaned up. One last thing I forgot to mention why it's good to clean it out is you're going to be putting different types of herbicides or maybe salt in the wintertime again, talking about guys that do a lot of snow removal. You're going to be putting different materials in it. So you want to clean out whatever you've got in it now before you put something else in there. If I were to use this pre-emergent and have all that residue and stuff in there and then go to dump grass seed in there and the grass seed gets that pre-emergent on there, it's just not good to cross-contaminate. So, all right, guys, wrapping up another day, another job in the books, another video made. And guys, I couldn't be more excited. So listen, if you found some value in this video, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up. Better yet, hit that, boom, right there, somewhere. Hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. And what's going to happen is every time I put out a new video, you guys are going to be the first ones to see it. It helps me to help you. Guys, leave some comments, leave some feedback if there's something you want to hear about or a certain video you want to see a topic on, or if you just got a couple more questions, let me know and I'll be happy to clarify it. So guys, I think I hear my wife ringing that dinner bell. It's time for me to go. I love you. I appreciate you. And above all else, God bless you.